Hello and welcome back to Simple Money Podcast. I'm Matthew Sewick, your host, also known as the Friendly Financial Coach. Today we continue our series on education by looking at a very important issue: the barriers and challenges that confront students that come from low-income households. To discuss this issue, we have Sarah Sabihuddin from the Halton Poverty Roundtable, an amazing organization that eliminates poverty through education, increased community engagement, and collective impact. So here's Sarah to introduce herself.
The Halton Poverty Roundtable is a nonprofit charitable organization based in Halton Region, just west of Toronto. The Halton Poverty Roundtable is comprised of regional changemakers challenging the complexity of poverty in our community. We work to shed light on all aspects of poverty and highlight this reality in our neighborhoods. Halton, for anyone who may not be aware, is comprised of 4 municipalities: the town of Oakville, city of Burlington, the town of Halton Hills, and the town of Milton. Generally, our community is seen as affluent and prosperous, often without recognition that poverty exists in our region. One aspect of our work at the Halton Poverty Roundtable is to raise awareness that poverty does exist in our community, to increase knowledge about the impacts of poverty on our family and friends, and to advocate for system-level changes that will benefit the community as a whole. In Canada, we are often made to believe that anyone, regardless of their social status, can achieve whatever they desire if they conform to a simple social formula. Go to the right schools, get a first-rate education, get a good job, work hard, climb the ladder of success, and once on this path, all desires will be within your grasp. Unfortunately, even in 2018, the hard reality is that for a significant number of people within our communities, the so-called level playing field slants towards the systemic barriers of poverty, racism, discrimination, gender inequality, marginalization, social isolation, and lack of opportunity. Poverty has a significant human cost. Low income limits an individual's or family's opportunity and access to affordable housing, healthy food, childcare, education, and employment. Long before a student reaches the halls of a college or university, many will have had to navigate a complicated maze of social and educational obstacles. Higher education is a valuable opportunity for all Canadians. Not only can it increase income earning potential for many who pursue it, but post-secondary education can also be a route out of poverty for many people living on low incomes. However, with so many of our fellow citizens focused on survival, it is no wonder that higher education is seen as being something that is unattainable. So what are the barriers for low-income students seeking to pursue post-secondary educational opportunities? Well, there are many. A few that we can easily identify are the obvious financial barriers, food security and nutritional barriers, social inclusion, acceptance and well-being, psychological barriers, family and societal support. As we know, post-secondary education is expensive. For a child born in 2017, the projected cost by TD Bank for post-secondary education in Ontario in 2035 will be just over $100,000 for a 4-year undergraduate degree. This is simply unattainable for many families making minimum wage in our province. Without having disposable income and an aggressive savings plan, many will be unable to meet these costs. Further, for many children of low-income families, they must contribute to the financial survival of the family unit in the here and now. Education can be seen as a luxury that cannot be substituted for a wage, even a minimum wage. That may mean the difference between putting food on the table or having to visit a food bank. The tragedy of this scenario is that for many low-income families, the struggle for survival has become a generational cycle and an entrenched pattern in the social and psychological life of the family. The reality is that only 30% of students from the lowest income segments end up attending post-secondary education. Even among those students with A+ averages, students from low-income families are 10% less likely to attend post-secondary education than their higher income students at the same grade level. For many families living on low incomes, the financial cost of pursuing higher education is often a barrier. Over the past several years, the federal and provincial governments have recognized the need for an increasingly skilled workforce. have made financial resources available to encourage low-income families to save for their children's education. Initiatives such as the Canada Learning Bond can provide up to $2,000 directly deposited into a registered education savings plan, or an RESP, for post-secondary studies for low-income families who qualify. In short, there is some respite for low-income households, at least on the financial front. Research has shown that having savings set aside for post-secondary education helps children believe that education is within their reach. In fact, a person with access to financial assets, including education savings, are more likely to graduate from post-secondary education, even if that savings is only $500. This is why education savings tools such as the Canada Learning Bond and the Registered Education Savings Plans are so important. However, with limited financial resources, low-income families have to make tough choices on daily essentials. For a child in poverty, this factor alone has a detrimental effect on immediate and long-term physical development, mental health, and behavior. For example, many children go to school hungry far too often. Access to nutritious food is essential to a healthy, growing individual and their development. Having limited access to healthy and regular meals is a huge barrier to educational success. It is well documented that living in poverty for any amount of time causes stress and anxiety and can make even the youngest member of a family feel as though they are in a constant state of fight or flight. Having the psychological pressure, as you can imagine, is negatively correlated to educational attainment. Children are particularly vulnerable to the injustices of poverty as they enter the public school system. It quickly becomes apparent that they are different from their peers. When they are unable to wear the same clothing, participate in sports or school trips, attend birthday parties of their friends due to cost, and are dependent upon breakfast programs provided by social agencies within the school system. While schools have become increasingly adept at addressing some of the disadvantages of low-income children, the labels of difference are difficult to combat within the social environment of the classroom or a playground. Cruelty and bullying take a significant toll on a child's confidence, self-esteem, learning potential, and sense of belonging. This is particularly evident with low-income students. Another barrier to the pursuit of post-secondary education for children in poverty is a situation where parents themselves have not had the ability to get an education, either as a result of economic or other social factors. Children who live in poverty typically have limited access to role models that will support them on a path to educational success. I have only been able to highlight and explain a few examples of barriers to the pursuit of post-secondary education for low-income individuals. As you can see, there are many, often lifelong factors that need to be taken into account. There is no one simple solution, but knowing that barriers exist and being open and honest about the realities facing people with lived experience in poverty is a great place to start the conversation and to advocate for system-level changes that can bring positive results over time. Post-secondary education is associated with many positive outcomes for individuals, communities, and nations as a whole. Ensuring that all citizens have equal access and opportunity to pursue post-secondary education is vital to the future of our country. Thanks for having me here today to speak to you all about the barriers facing low-income individuals seeking post-secondary educational opportunities. The Halton Poverty Roundtable works with many individuals living in poverty in our community, and we hope to amplify their voice and allow them to share their experience and their positions on poverty, and so that these can be heard to decision makers in our community.
Thanks again to Sarah from Halton Poverty Roundtable for discussing the impacts of poverty on educational prospects. More can be found at haltonpovertyroundtable.com or on Twitter at haltonpovertyrt and Facebook under Halton Poverty Roundtable. And if you have any questions or episode suggestions for me, you can contact me directly at info@ffcoach.ca or find me on Twitter at @F_Coach. Thanks again and talk to you next week.